All right, it's keep or dump time again. Mark, this is where, and I'm just going to lay out the ground rules really quickly. We look at a club and we pretend that we're sporting director, director of football. We take into account what we think the budget's going to be, taking into account, of course, also profit and sustainability rules, which are a big thing in the Premier League and elsewhere with their equivalents, with UEFA as well, taking into account which players we want to extend, which of course then takes into account their wages, their age, what the manager wants to do with them, and which players that they might want to move on if they need to raise cash for something. It's an imperfect exercise, but I stress this is not just based on whether, he's good, he's bad. No, anybody can do that. We're trying to bring a little more. Hopefully we succeed. Overall, Arsenal, 2 consecutive years, second place in the league, young team. We're talking tweaks here, right? Not major surgery?
Tweaks. Key areas, I think, obviously they need probably additional strength up front. And the big areas off the pitch, as we'll get to in a minute, is Mikel Arteta. Contract expires end of next season. They need to resolve that pretty quickly, especially with the possibility of Pep Guardiola leaving Man City at the same time. So if you're Arsenal, you want to make sure that the architect of your return to the brink of success, is tied down to a long contract.
This story has not been in the papers much about his contract expiring. And I'm assuming the reason has not been in the papers much is that when people go and talk to Arteta's camp or to the club, they say, oh, no, don't worry. We'll sort it out. Everything's sorted. We'll just sort it out as soon as the season ends. So it may be that by the time you watch this, it is sorted out. But until it gets sorted out, we have to take this into account. And I think it's important that they sort it out this summer because if I'm Edu, if I'm Arsenal, I have fiduciary responsibility to take care of the club first. And if I'm not sure that Arteta will be there in a year's time, and I can't be sure until he signs a contract, I might not go to bat for Arteta to the degree that Arteta wants me to if it means investing a lot of the club's resources. Fair?
Yeah. Arteta's given a couple of signals that he's really happy. When the Barcelona interest came about earlier this year, he was very quick to knock it out and said, definitely no. So he could have used that as a bit of leverage and he didn't. So I think Arsenal fans should be fairly calm about it. But if he's not signed a new contract by the start of next season, I'd be a little bit alarmed. Yeah,
I'm 100% convinced that he's going to stay and he's going to extend that deal, but we have to flag it up. Overall, this is a very, as we said, this is a young team. I think I was struck by the fact that they've been injury-free mostly the last 2 years with some exceptions like Timber and Partey. I don't think this is something you can take for granted again next year. So we both agree that broadly speaking, we'll hopefully be looking to add some depth in some situations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously Arsenal are a much more appealing prospect to incoming players now because they finished second twice 2 years running. They're a club that's on the up. So if you're a player, you're thinking, yeah, Arsenal's a good move.
One thing which is to be taken into account, obviously they'll have the Champions League income on board. But they did spend a ton of money last year. Their net spend was 140 million. And on top of that, they have to spend 27 million to make David Raya's deal permanent when they signed him from Brentford. Of course, it was a loan with an obligation to buy. It was a way of pushing money down the road. So that already cuts into their budget for this summer. So we have to find a way for them to maneuver while staying well within profit and sustainability rules. So looking at this, and as we do this, some players there's nothing to discuss because we agree that they should keep them, and we're on the same page. David Raya, you're not a massive fan, but take a look at the goalkeepers first. You're not a massive fan, I suspect, but the way his deal was done, his contract's up in 2025. It's obvious he's the starter. Yeah. You have to extend the deal. Yeah,
have to. Yeah, you have to do the deal. Look, they have the goalkeeping options. I don't think any of them are particularly great. I think Ramsdale's got his faults. I think Raya's got his faults, but they've settled on Raya, so Ramsdale will go. But Raya, he's had a few moments this year where he could have let them down. So he has to, just like the team avoid injuries, Raya's got to iron out the flaws and the mistakes and hope he's got a more convincing season.
You mentioned Ramsdale there. Yeah. There was some question about whether he'd be the starter. It looked like there was going to be some competition early in the year. There isn't. He's 26 years old. He's got a deal through 2026. They do have a one-year option. Yeah. I'm assuming Ramsdale does not want to sit on the bench for another year. I mean, he started for England just back in September. He's hardly played. So you give him the opportunity to move on, ideally for a fee. One thing, though, just looking at the Premier League, there are a number of very good number twos who we think might come on the market. Stefan Ortega's one. Kevin Kelleher's one. The thing about goalkeepers is that if they're leaving a club where they're number two, it's because they want to be number one. And there's only 20 number one jobs in the Premier League and not many more outside the Premier League that pay Premier League wages. This suggests to me you're not going to get a lot of money for Ramsdale. I mean, they may have to settle for 25 million, 20 million.
Well, they might get what it's going to cost to sign Raya. And in many ways, that might
exactly. It may net out that way.
Yeah, it may net out that way, like you said. I think there are suggestions that Newcastle are interested, but that surprises me because I think Nick Pope is a very good goalkeeper. Technically, he's very good, but he's not great with his feet. But then the reason why Ramsdale lost out at Arsenal is because he wasn't very good with his feet.
Right.
So we'll wait and see on that one.
They have two other reserve guys. One is Archer Okonkwo, who Wrexham fans will remember. His deal, he was there with Wrexham on loan. He's been released. The other one is Carl Hein, who I don't want to spend too much time on for obvious reasons, but he was the third goalkeeper. I'm fascinated by this. He's a starting goalkeeper for Estonia. He's already 29 caps for them. He basically has almost never played for Arsenal, and he's been there for years and years. He's got a year left. Obviously, I don't know anybody's going to give you any money for him. So presumably you've kept him around because he's good. He can't be your number three keeper. You extend his deal a little bit, probably doesn't make a lot of money, and you loan him somewhere so you can play. Yeah.
It could be the new Emi Martinez, spending all his time at Arsenal and before becoming a real big superstar.
He could be the new Emi Martinez, yes. Martinez, not Martinez, Martinez.
I say that on purpose.
I know you do. Looking at the defenders, there's a whole group of them who are nicely poised and who are just straight keeps for obvious reasons. William Saliba, 2027, Kivior, 2028, Ben White, 2028, and there's an extension option to 29, 26. He's a keep. Takehiro Tomoyasu, 2026, but there's a 1-year extension. This is all very, very easy. We're keeping all these guys. We're going to keep Gabriel too, although you've got something to say about Mr. Gabriel Magalhaes.
Yeah, listen, he's had a good couple of years for Arsenal. I do think he's prone to giving referees something to think about. He's a bit reckless at times, and I think if he can iron those flaws out, I think he's very good alongside Saliba. But you imagine a little bit of Martin Keown, Invincibles Martin Keown. But Martin Keown, I think by the time he was in the Invincibles, had a bit more experience and ironed out the flaws that Gabriel still has. But there's a player there, but you can't afford him to be as reckless as he can be at times.
Yeah, I didn't mention Jurriën Timber there as well. He's the prototypical like a new signing thing, given that he missed virtually all of last season. So the interesting one where we might disagree a little bit is, and I'll be curious to see what Arteta does, is Alexander Zinchenko. Yeah. He's 27. His deal expires in 2026. This is where you either extend him or you look to move him. I think you listen to offers. I think you look at what he can contribute overall. Zinchenko was a midfielder, still plays in midfield for the Ukraine.
Yeah.
You ask yourself, can you contribute there? Do you want to contribute there? I think it's pretty clear that in terms of what Arteta wants from a left back now, it's not Zinchenko. He wants he wants a left back who's more defensive. We've seen Kivior there. We've seen Tomiyasu there. We'll presumably see Timber there. You're suggesting maybe you just look to really aggressively move him on now.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's become what he could become at City, really. He's become a kind of a utility player that can fill holes, but he's not really a first choice in any of the positions. And I think Arsenal probably, I think both have been very good for each other. When Zinchenko came in, he was really good for Arsenal. The mentality he brought from Man City it helped that bridge the gap from where they were to where they are now. But he's not going to play. I think he's a good professional. I think the best thing would be to find a club for him, and he could then play 40 games a season somewhere else.
Cedric's contract is up. He's going to be released. No surprise there. Loan players, we've got two fullbacks on loan. Nuno Tavares, he's 24 years old. Deal expires 2025. He was on loan at Nottingham Forest. He had a really good year, or he played a lot, at least for Marseille the year before. At Forest, he was slowed down by injuries. I don't think he had much of an impact. You're obviously not going to extend him. You have to move him on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
And I think you can maybe get 5-8 million, something like that, given he's still young. Kieran Tierney, an interesting one. He only made 13 starts for Real Sociedad this season. He had a 2-month injury spell, but then he also didn't play much in the Champions League. I'm not sure he was a great fit there in terms of his style of play.
He's still young. Tierney's 26. He's still young, and he seems to have been around for a long time. He had a lot of time at Celtic and a lot of trophies. And again, a bit like Zinchenko, he was good for Arsenal at the time when he came in, but I think now maybe the time has come to move on. What Arsenal want and what Tierney wants is to have a really good Euros with Scotland and maybe push himself back in the market, because he's a good pro, Kieran Tierney, but it's just time to move on.
And I think maybe you think of maybe a loan with an option to buy or something like that if you can't get a fee for him. Right now, I think you're looking 10, 12 million, something like that, realistically. In midfield, let's do the really easy ones. Declan Rice, of course. His deal expires in 2028. He's a keep. Martin Odegaard, also 2028. He's a keep. Kai Havertz, also 2028, is a keep. I think these are all very, very, very straightforward. Also straightforward is Mohamed El Neni's contract is up and he will be released. I think where it gets a little more interesting is in central midfield. We've seen this season that, we had Rice sit in front of the back four. In certain games, that's not a good solution because you lose Rice's ability going forward. We've seen Jorginho play there. We've seen Thomas Partey play there when he comes back. I think both are fine for another year, but they're both in a situation where Jorginho's 32. His deal is up in 2025. You do have the extension option. I think quite clearly you do not extend him as long as he wants to stay because there's games when I think Jorginho is going to be really valuable. You agree with that, right? Yeah,
because I think Partey's going to go, so you can't lose both. You keep Jorginho.
All right, let's talk Partey. You think he's going to go?
Yeah.
You think there's somebody who's going to come and give you money for Partey and his wages and his baggage and his injuries?
I think he's going to go. I think he's at that age where he wants to move on. I don't think he's got a future at Arsenal. I think it's fairly simple. I think he goes.
But you would want to move him on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I think it depends on the number. I think he still has a role to play, and it depends on who you can bring into central midfield because you need to add, I think, some depth there because Jorginho can't play every game, nor would you want him to. If you lose Partey, you literally are down to just Rice and Jorginho in that role, unless you can readapt Zinchenko.
I'll bring somebody in.
Is all TBD. Or bring somebody in. They do have somebody on loan who I think is worth mentioning. That's Albert Lokonga. He's 24. Deals up in 2026. I'm imagining he does not make a ton of money. I thought he did fine at Luton last year. I would extend him. I would extend his contract, and I would have him there in the squad as a defensive specialist.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think, look at the names we've spoken about, Partey, Jorginho, maybe even Emil Smith Rowe in a minute. They're all decent players, but I think Arsenal need to raise the quality now. And they need depth, but they also need more quality. And I think that is the issue we've got here, where El Neni as well.
El Neni's gone.
If they get four players move out, if they bring in one or two that are better than those, I think they have to raise the level it's quality rather than quantity that Arsenal need now to take that next step.
I completely disagree. I think Jorginho and Partey have tons of quality.
Oh, Jorginho, he's staying. Older. I've said he's staying.
Well, but that's fine. So if you move Partey out and El Neni's out, obviously you're down two in a role that was probably a little bit thin to begin with. If you are going to make a major investment in central midfield, maybe you make the major investment on a central midfielder, and then you complete your core of central midfielders with Zinchenko, if he's adaptable there, and you don't move him on to fund the arrival of a newcomer, or Lokonga. I think Lokonga can give you the energy. He's already your player. I don't think it's going to take long and I think he would relish another shot at the club. Further forward, we have two other attacking midfielders to talk about. And these are basically Martin Odegaard's backups, right? For those situations when Kai Havertz, we've seen him play in attacking midfield. We've seen him play up front. I'm fairly certain that his future at Arsenal is up front, not in attacking midfield. So my question would be, alternatives to Odegaard. Odegaard's extremely durable, but there's no guarantee that's going to continue, right?
I think Odegaard's one of those players that you can't really have an alternative for because he's I won't say he's unique, but he's one.
But you have to have somebody else who can play attacking midfield when he's not there.
Maybe not to the level that he does, but I think you have to have another body, like you say, to be able to fill in. But he's a very special player.
So the bodies are right now are Fabio Vieira
Yeah.
and Emil Smith Rowe. Fabio Vieira, I think we're in agreement on this. I think he needs to go out on loan. He's had some injuries. He's been there 2 years. He's only started 5 games. I think he needs to play regularly.
Yeah.
And when he has played, except for the odd game, he hasn't had that much of an impact.
Yeah.
So I think he's best served going on loan. Smith Rowe is a different one because his deal expires in 2026, which means you either extend it or you risk losing him for nothing.
It's an interesting one, Smith Rowe, because the Arsenal fans love him. Obviously, he's come through the ranks and he's a homegrown player, but he doesn't play enough. He's a talented player, but whether Arteta sees something, he's not quite the level.
Is he not playing enough because Odegaard never gets hurt?
No, I think if Arteta believed him a little bit more, he'd find a way to play him to keep him involved. But I saw him play against Luton in a game towards the end of the season, and it was a game where Arteta played all the fringe players that hadn't played, and it was almost like, right, I'm resting these players because you can have a game, and he wasn't great, but then he's not played for a while. I just think it smacks to me that Arteta doesn't really believe in him, but there's a player there, and at his age, I think you can persevere with him, but I'm not sure that Arsenal are going to do that.
If we do move him on, what do you think you can get?
I think you can get more than 20 million for him. I think you can, he's a good young player. Age is on his side. I think 20 million plus.
Yeah, I think that's probably the range, and it is one of those things that could really come back to bite you in the backside where you look silly. But equally, the guy needs to play and get regular playing time. Moving forward, okay, I'm going to deal with the straight keeps first, which are pretty evident. Bukayo Saka deal is up in 2027. It's a straight keep. Martinelli also up in 2027. There is a 1-year extension option. What I would say, you obviously keep him, but a bit like Gabriel, this is another one where you need to either ratchet up your game, not have a good season this past year. You have alternatives there, so you can carry him because Trossard can play there, Gabriel Jesus can play there. But I think this is a big year for him coming up. And yeah, those are my kind of automatic keeps. Leandro Trossard, 29, deal expires in 2026. I think he's done really, really well when he's played.
Yeah.
You're not going to extend necessarily now. You're going to evaluate down the road.
Yeah, but also he does well when he comes in, but at 29 he might want to play more. So I wouldn't suggest.
He got a ton of playing time last year.
Yeah, but he probably wants more. He won't feel like he's a
okay. Then he can go back to Brighton and play more.
This is the point. He may want to play more, and if that's the case, then he's a player that Arsenal could get good money for. I wouldn't want to lose him, but like you say, in January he's got 18 months left in his contract. Somebody out there might pay good money for Trossard, but I wouldn't want to sell him at this stage. I think you keep him, but
evaluate in January whether to extend or whether somebody needs him as a sort of a mid-season boost. Gabriel Jesus, I view as a winger. I think obviously he can play center forward, but I think I go back to what Pep said.
Yeah,
his position is out wide. Reece Nelson. It's an interesting one. He's been at the club. Another one's been at the club forever. I'm sure a lot of people like him.
Yeah.
I think his deal is up in 2027. We're both in agreement here, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's 24. He needs to make a career. You don't want to be on the bench for the rest of his career.
I think, and especially in his role, there are so many other players that he's the fifth choice winger. So I think that's pretty open and shut. Eddie Nketiah. I think so many people out there say, Arsenal need a center forward. Arsenal need a 30-goal season man. I think that's complete nonsense.
Well, I think they do, but
it's complete nonsense because Arsenal score a ton of goals. They scored a ton of goals last year. They scored a ton of goals this year. That's not the problem.
They can play a different way. They can have a focal point. They can have somebody they can rely upon to get goals in the tight games. Play a different way.
Yeah, Kai Havertz scored 13 goals in the Premier League this season.
Is not enough.
And he only played 40% of the time at center forward. I'm pretty sure if he plays center forward the whole season, he will get you to 20 goals in the league.
I don't think I think if Arsenal could, they're not going to get Harry Kane, let's be honest. But if they could find a Harry Kane style player, they're not going to get Haaland either. But if they could get a player who's going to get them 25 goals a season as a centre forward, it gives them two different ways of playing, and it would take them to a different level. But
they have that. They have that in Kai Havertz. I am a Havertz believer.
Yes, I know.
The point is, we're talking about Eddie Nketiah here.
Yeah.
The idea is
it's not him.
It's not him, and so you move him. Maybe you can raise a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And you clear space for another striker. right? That's what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm all right with listening to offers for him. I'm not 100% sure that you need to move him for that reason. He played a ton. He played 57 Premier League games he appeared in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Arteta obviously sees a role for him off the bench. I don't want to see him starting because I think the most goals he ever scored in his career is 5. But if he wants to be there, if he's happy with that role, I would certainly prioritize central midfield over getting this mythical center forward that people go on about.
No, listen, Nketiah is the sort of player you could see that would want to stay because he's come through the ranks. He's an Arsenal kid.
He's a Chelsea kid, actually, but hey, sure.
Well, he's
comes
an
from
Arsenal
Chelsea's
kid.
academy.
What I'm
But
saying is
he became an Arsenal kid.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So, but people around him might say, look, you're 24, nearly 25. Maybe you need to move on for your career, but he might think I'm at Arsenal, I might win something next year. But
well, he had a chance to leave on a free transfer, right? And he didn't.
Yeah.
So I think that tells you all. I think he just really loves the club. And maybe Reece Nelson does too. It depends on what role you're going to give him and what opportunities are out there. Marquinhos, just to finish up on this, he's 21. He's a long-term deal through 2027. He's been out on loan. I think it's obvious he should stay on loan where he is. And he's finally actually getting playing time at Fluminense. So, Mark, overall, our verdict, we touched upon the center forward thing.
yeah,
Again, we disagree on this point. And again, I would also cite Manchester City as an example before Erling Haaland, who was their big goal scorer.
yeah. But they signed Haaland because they needed a different way of playing. And look what happened, they won the treble. So maybe Arsenal's view is that we can go that next step that City did and maybe win the league. They just need more in their armoury.
Yeah, one step at a time. I think there's other priorities. And I think central midfield, the succession plan. What do you do? Who is your third element with Rice and Ødegaard? And again, and how much money can you throw at it? Because this is the other point, right? If you move Ramsdale, if you can move near Tierney, Nuno Tavares, maybe Nelson, shifting Ramsdale will only help you pay for Raya.
Yeah.
Tierney, Nuno Tavares, Nelson, maybe you're looking at 20 on a good day. You could maybe get a little bit more for Zinchenko if he moves on. That doesn't leave you a lot of money unless, and obviously you can also dip into the pot a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to break even this summer, but it is a little tricky.
Yeah.
It is tricky. And for me, you need to put those funds into central midfield. And maybe if you do bring in another striker, if Nketiah moves, you bring in somebody else for the bench.
Yeah, I mean, if they've got a very good scouting department, they might find players that don't cost as much money as they would ordinarily have to spend. But it's all about being smart off the pitch now and recruitment because they do need. I mean, it's a long time since Arsene Wenger, found Patrick Vieira for nothing basically.
Can we again knock this on the head?
I know he's at Milan.
Where did he find him? He was at an obscure club nobody had ever heard of called AC Milan.
But he wasn't doing very well, was he?
He'd been there for 6 months, and they still spent £3.5 million for him, which was a ton of money. I'm sorry, I love Arsene Wenger. The man is a genius. He's a professor. He doesn't need toadies bigging him up based on
I'm not an Arsene Wenger
false
toady.
histories.
Yes,
but we digress.
All right, Manu Petit then. Let's see if they can find another Manu Petit. He was a good player
there
as
you
well.
go.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think they're in good shape. The other good news is they don't have too many big extensions to worry about in at least for the next 12 months. And of course, I have the Champions League money coming in.
Yeah.
So big summer ahead. But they have the tools to get better.